As fellow adult action figure collectors, a lot of us look forward to two big events during the year that are going to reveal what's coming up next, the next hottest products out there, the ones that we're dying to get to add to our collection. The first being San Diego Comic-Con. This is the Hasbro booth at San Diego Comic-Con, and this is the Mattel booth at San Diego Comic-Con. Two of kind of the epicenters of reveals for the adult collector of what's coming next, what are going to be the hottest, newest, coolest figures that we're going to add to either complete, add to, or start a collection. The other event of the year for us as adult collectors is New York Toy Fair. My name is Scott Neitlich. I worked in the toy industry, I still work in the toy industry, but have for the last 20 plus years. But I'm also a collector, like you guys. And that's kind of given me sort of a unique perspective. And I wanted to share that today to talk a little bit more about New York Toy Fair and how that plays into the overall toy process, as well as Dallas, which we don't hear that much about. So let's jump in. So New York Toy Fair, for most of us adult collectors, is really about kind of like those preview events that the big toy companies hold, where they're going to show off the latest figures, usually in either a PowerPoint presentation or with new models and a spokesperson. This is an example. So this is from Hasbro's presentation, I believe from last New York Toy Fair, where they were showing off a Strong Guy Marvel Legends figure in the upcoming Deadpool wave, shipping in fall of 2020. So for a lot of adult collectors, this is kind of the only thing we're paying attention to in New York Toy Fair is what are going to be the latest reveals from the big companies that are going to add to our collections and help them grow. And this can be from a variety of brands, it can be from a variety of form factors. All that matters is that the event, New York Toy Fair, much like the event San Diego Comic-Con, are those two events where spokespeople, like, me, this is what I used to do at Mattel, here I am at New York Toy Fair, giving said presentation to what's called the fan press, meaning all of the action figure websites and occasionally sort of mainstream press, like maybe Entertainment Weekly, that kind of thing, will come out and will show, like in this example, I was showing Castle Grayskull. And this is how we premiered Castle Grayskull to the fan press at New York Toy Fair. And this is kind of what it's all about. This is actually what New York Toy Fair is about. Now, it's not about the adult collector action figures per se. It is about the greater catalog of products that a company has. So, for Mattel, things like Hot Wheels and Barbie. But really, for the greater toy industry, New York Toy Fair does come down to what the big companies like Hasbro and Mattel are doing. They are showing off their latest product, and yes, they are meeting with buyers, and they're meeting with toy professionals and people in the industry, the representatives from everything from your Walmarts and Targets and rest in peace Toys R Us to your smaller, your mom and pops or your Walgreens or Tom's Toys, whatever it is. Yes, this does happen at New York Toy Fair. And in this sense, New York Toy Fair is no different than almost any other convention. This is a medical device convention, also held at the Javits later in the year. And it looks very similar. Lots of booths, lots of people going around. And back to New York Toy Fair, for the smaller companies, it is sometimes an opportunity to really sit down with the buyers. But much like the way Mattel and Hasbro promote their collector lines, it's also really about the PR. New York Toy Fair, while it started decades and decades ago as the premier time for showing off product and meeting with retailers, it isn't that anymore. What it really is about headlines. It's about the large toy companies using New York Toy Fair's presence to get the attention of the media. And whether that's showing off Castle Grayskull to collectors or showing off, things like Barbie or Mr. Potato Head, New York Toy Fair is not really about getting product directly into the hands of kids or collectors. It's much more about headlines. It's a media event. It used to be a sell-in event decades and decades ago, but it's transformed. Nowadays, New York Toy Fair is about media. Dallas Toy Fair, on the other hand, which happens in the fall, falls very much under the radar for the adult collector. And that's because Dallas Toy Fair has really taken over what New York Toy Fair used to be. So let me kind of help you navigate this. Dallas Toy Fair is set up a little differently. It's not in the Javits Center, where it's one big giant floor with lots of booths. Dallas Toy Fair is in kind of a sort of a hotel-esque building where each floor has different toy companies. And as you ride up the elevator and you get out on each floor is kind of themed. So one floor might be dolls, another floor might be games, and another floor action figures, et cetera, et cetera. And then all the way at the top are kind of these small companies where it's sort of a mismatch of different booths. This is where the actual selling happens. What used to happen at New York Toy Fair, what now happens at Dallas Toy Fair. Especially for the smaller companies, this is when they actually meet with the toy buyers and sell in their product. New York has become that publicity, that PR show, and Dallas has now become the show sort of you need to attend in order to sell your product into a retailer, which is honestly the hardest part about designing a toy line, is getting it into retail, convincing a toy buyer to make a deal, to sign you up, and to get on shelf. Overcoming that obstacle is basically all the difference, especially for a smaller toy company, not an established company like your Legos and Spin Masters and Mattels, Jacks and Hasbros. Those smaller companies go to Dallas, and this could make or break them. They could put everything into Dallas. Now, the bigger companies, like your Mattels and your Hasbros, they don't actually go to Dallas Toy Fair. They go to New York Toy Fair because it's a publicity moment. It's a way to get headlines. It's a way to, get billboards and get media impressions. But the business that used to happen at New York, that now happens at Dallas for the majority of the toy industry, well, the big guys, your Hasbros and your Mattels, they don't attend Dallas. And the reason they don't attend Dallas, or if they do, it's in a very limited capacity, is essentially these companies are big enough that they have their very own toy fair, and it's a private event. And you never hear about it because it is only for retailers. It's only for the industry. You hear about New York because it's such a publicity show. But what Mattel calls El Segundo Toy Fair, because they're located in El Segundo, or Hasbro calls Pawtucket Toy Fair, is an internal event. No photography allowed, and I happen to find a few shots online. I think these were probably publicity shots, but it'll give you an idea of what it looks like. It looks very similar to kind of Comic-Con or New York, but it's all set up, in closed doors. And this is this is Mattel and Hasbro's version of Dallas, where they show off their product. And they'll have celebrities, they'll have, everything from movie stars to WWE superstars to, anyone that's, linked to the industry. And this is all to present to the buyers. And the buyers are basically very sophisticated businessmen and women who come and basically go brand by brand and are led around by the brand managers who make presentations. And of course, the best part is the food. Well, as a former Mattel employee, yes, for marketing and for sales and for the guests, the sales reps, there's just like an unlimited buffet table of amazing food because the big companies have the budget to cater to buyers, and this was always my favorite part because you could always just get such awesome food and fancy treats and unlimited coffee and all sorts of things. So for a collector line at these internal shows, it's going to look something like this. Just a small handful of prototype figures representing a year's worth of product. So a buyer is going to see a handful of DC Universe Classics figures, but seeing 4 or 5 figures, they're potentially, ideally, going to place an order for a year's worth of product, knowing that they're going to get, say 5 waves or 7 waves of, 6 or 7 characters each. And honestly, this is exactly the same as the way the Maddie subscriptions worked. I would show off 4 or 5 figures and then ask the subscribers to buy into a year's worth of product. Essentially, the subscribers were following the same exact path and procedure that a retail buyer follows. It's just done on a smaller level. And that's kind of how the subs work. So that's just a little bit of insight about how these toy shows work. They're not the same they were even 10 years ago, or let alone 50 years ago, when New York Toy Fair was the be-all end-all event for the toy industry. Nowadays, New York is much more about generating publicity. It's finding ways to use the media interest in the show in general to snag headlines. Dallas, which then happens in the fall, in the October timeframe, that is when the actual buying takes place, when the buying reps from your Targets and your Walgreens and everyone down to your mom and pops are going to go booth by booth, and you're hoping, if you have a small booth, that with some of the big guys from like your Targets and Walmarts are going to come by. So that was a peek inside, a look inside the way the toy fairs work. I hope this was informative. If I missed anything, please leave it in your comments below. I can always do a follow-up. I love your comments. I appreciate the subscriptions and the thumbs up. And I'll see you guys around the internet for another inside look at the toy industry.